Anti-Afro Bengalis, I wanted to make sure I get an update to you regarding what's coming down the pike regarding the fired rogue probation officer, Antonio Johnson. What's next? What's coming your way? I'm going to continue to give you updates. We're going to continue to talk about what's important. I also wanted to let you know what's not important. And I'm not being rude. I'm not being disrespectful or ungrateful. You know that. I'm just putting it out there. What's not important is what any of these freaks think about me or anyone I support, care about. Doesn't make any difference. I mean, this whole situation, as far as what route these demons and these losers are on, has nothing to do with me. As far as what route I'm on, the destination I'm headed towards, my itinerary, they don't have the guts to be on the same track. They can't afford the tickets. I'm in a whole different arena, doing something totally different. They're too terrified to come along. So for this reason, they continue with the same old bullshit, same old garbage. I don't care anything about it. As far as their opinion and what they think and all this other garbage, I'm not running around trying to find out where the next KKK meeting is. Therefore, I'm not interested what the Klan has to say or any flunky Klan with the tan has to say. It makes no difference. What makes a difference is what the decision makers have to say. What are the next steps the decision makers are likely to take or will be taking? Because there are some steps they will be taking, but as far as what their decisions will be, we can't determine that. But I'm going to tell you what the next steps will be because it's a matter of law. But then again, you still got to check because even though something's a matter of law, decision makers and people in positions of authority don't always follow the law. Let me do a slight detour. I'll give you a little bit of update. Let's go off DJ Drama, DJ Jackass, Antonio Johnson for a second. With respect to Carrie Ann, we're in the process of determining whether that school district followed the law and forwarded our complaints to the State Department of Ed. We're in the process of determining that because filing complaints with the school district was step one. The school district doesn't have the ultimate decision as far as what would happen when it comes to the credentialing process, because that's what we're pursuing. So table that and we'll give you an update on that. Now, let's go to Antonio Johnson. There's been an investigation, Internal Affairs. Department of Community Services and Department of Community Supervision aren't the same thing. Department of Community Supervision, aka Probation. Probation also has contracted services, and we're being specific to Georgia. So I'm talking about the Department of Community Supervision, which is a state agency. That's the agency that Antonio Johnson, aka DJ Drama, I'm going to abandon the nicknames for now so we can be clear about it. That's who he was working for. There are next steps. There are requirements that must be fulfilled as a matter of laws that were passed in the state of Georgia. Whenever there has been a certain type of disciplinary procedure that a probation officer has been subjected to, such as an internal investigation, those findings have to be submitted to the Georgia Peace Officer Standards and Training Council, aka POST. It's required. It's not optional or arbitrary. Once POST receives the report from the agency, and this applies to any person who is considered a peace officer. This includes police officers, probation officers, parole agents, people who work in the jail, anyone in Georgia that has the title peace officer is under the jurisdiction of Post. They will review the report that they receive. Post will then decide whether to address the issue. And if they do, they will launch their own independent investigation starting from square one. They don't say, based on the findings of this agency, we're just going to adopt those findings and we're going to agree. No, they do their own independent investigation. And from there, they will determine whether, as an agency, as a state agency, because Post is a state agency, they will render discipline and what that type of discipline will be. Post doesn't always decide to revoke certification. Whatever they decide, it's up to the committee or the council. So Antonio Johnson, I'll put money on it, is going to be going through yet another investigation. I'll bet you. They're not going to say, oh, you just did this. Oh, you were punished enough. I don't believe that. I believe they're going to launch their own independent investigation. And when that investigation is finished, it's a matter of public record. But I'm not going to sit back and wait. I'm going to be making my own inquiries, going to be filing my own complaint. Anyone can file a complaint. I'm going to determine just what is happening with these findings, with the internal investigation yielded. I'm going to track it. I'm going to make sure every nook and cranny is looked up and down, all around, all four sides, because this is something that should have never occurred. This is something that occurred that Antonio Johnson thought he was going to get away with. This is something Antonio Johnson did knowing he was dead ass wrong. So here's the thing that really gets me. Whether or not someone knew he was a probation officer, he never should have done what he did. What difference does it make whether somebody knows he was a probation officer? He knows he was not supposed to do what he did. And to turn around and think that he should be given some sort of pass or there's a reason why he shouldn't be subjected to consequences is ridiculous. He wanted people subjected to consequences who engaged in no wrongdoing. He wanted people ridiculed. He wanted people ostracized. That's why he came on every Friday night and told lie after lie after lie after lie, targeting Rev G, targeting me, targeting every single one of our friends, every single person who refused to attack us. He thought he had a right to target them. And in doing so, clearly violated his oath of office. I mean, how many peace officers do you see here on YouTube acting a fool like this? Yes, we know what we're talking about when they're doing something on the job and they shouldn't have done it and they got caught. But outside of that, how many are on YouTube doing what Antonio Johnson did, ridiculing people for having been arrested, trashing people for having mental health diagnoses, doxing people's personal information? And I want to make sure we're clear, whether I'm saying hacking or doxing in the purest form, releasing information that was not previously released. And you got the information through illegal means. That's the pure definition of hacking / doxing. Remember, doxing was the term to give the white folks a break who were being caught because they didn't want to see them as criminals, because the term hacking is straight up criminal. There was no in between. We got to make it cool for the white folks on social media who are doing this. It's not doxing if the information is publicly accessible. It's not publicly accessible if it's a juvenile record. Juvenile records are not available to the public. You'll know about a juvenile record if it's referenced in an adult sentencing report. You'll know about a juvenile record if they make reference to it in court. But the actual record itself is not publicly accessible. The fact that someone's trying to get something expunged, that is not accessible to the public. And he's making reference to that. People's social security numbers are not accessible to the public. Mona went into the system, got all the information, and passed it around. We know that's what happened. The fact that they didn't have the evidence in time for their report to be completed didn't mean he didn't do it, but that's besides the point. What Antonio Johnxon did, the information that they had, the conclusions that they drew, the facts that were determined, the findings that were verified, was bad enough. I said it in my other video. The findings that this entity made is not the end of the line. It's just the beginning, just like I said about the Carrie Ann situation. Just the beginning. This can go in all different directions. And how does anybody know this is not sitting on the district attorney's desk? The district attorney's not going to come and tell people. Guess what I'm looking at right now? Guess what we're considering? The district attorney doesn't do that. The district attorney does not say, you know what? We are in the process of looking at this case, and this is where we are now. Now, if the public puts heat on the district attorney, the police will say, we submitted the case to the DA, and the DA decides, but the DA is not going to come out and start giving a blow-by-blow about how they're evaluating the case. They're going to come out and tell the public, we decided we're going to press charges or we're not. We think the burden can be met or not. They're not going to invite you into the meetings where they have the police records and the interviews and the investigative reports. They're not going to invite you in to listen to those meetings and discussions and decision-making process about whether a case meets criteria in their opinion. You're not going to tell the public that. You're not going to invite you in. You're going to find out ultimately whether or not charges are pressed when that decision is made. And this is someone who was so secure, so confident. Why? Because he got fooled by the numbers game. He thought because he had numbers in the chat and he was talking shit about Rev G, calling Rev G Eddie Long, and people were laughing. That convinced him that he was right. That convinced him that he was going to get away with it. The fact that he was calling me all kinds of bitches and people laughed, that convinced him that it was okay. The fact that he was digging in Kip's son's records and it was a bunch of shits and giggles and harassing Kip's son offline using a raggedy, wannabe, thirsty female, that was going to be all good. Oh my God, this is so funny. And it ended up they couldn't even afford the tickets to go and listen to the son's comedy show. That's embarrassing. We're going to go and harass somebody on his place of employment, but they couldn't even afford the entry fee. I'm sorry, this is so... Was it worth it? Was it worth it? It was a numbers game. They were focusing on a numbers game. But the bottom line is this. How many people signed off on that report? One or two, maybe, versus how many in those chats that were joining in, harassing people, targeting people's families, and then turning around and telling them, you need to accept this as a joke. A lot of nerves are rattled. Whose nerves are rattled? Those who know they did wrong and they know the guillotine is coming down. They know they're clean, cold, busted, and there's no way out of it. They already perpetrated the behaviors. You can't take the behaviors back. It doesn't matter how many names they call us. It doesn't matter how much shit they talk about us. It's not going to factor in when it comes down to determining if the law has been broken, if probation violations have occurred. If you looked in the computer for people he had no business looking up, if that probation certification is going to be revoked. No amount of numbers on YouTube are going to save you, are going to save the demons and the freaks and the losers. You can put 1 million people in the chat. It's not going to save your job. And that goes out to not just this DJ drama, Antonio Johnson. That goes out to several. That goes out to many. It goes out to all of those who participated in this bullshit, because this by no means is over. Nobody can force us to forget about it. Nobody can force us to shut up about it. We're going to keep posting about it. Those who perpetrated the crimes, they don't have to listen to the videos. They don't have to keep leaving us messages hoping we'll post them. They don't have to wait in desperation, just hoping we'll respond to each and every one of their ridiculous bullshit comments. They don't have to follow us around in KKK mode and Clan with the Tan mode, hoping that we're going to fight and argue with them so they can get content. If they don't have content, guess whose problem that is? It's their problem. We're not here on YouTube to give them content. If they can't figure out how to get content on their own, that's their problem. We're going to keep doing what we're doing. We're going to keep talking about this. We're going to keep following it. We're going to keep posting on it. And whoever doesn't like it, guess what? Whose problem it is? It's their problem. We will not be silenced. We're not going to shut up. We're not going to stop reporting on this. We're going to keep right on running our mouths. Just like they ran their mouths, we're going to run ours. Listen, folks, more coming your way. In the meantime, buyer beware.